The death penalty debate taking center stage in Ohio. Ahead on Face the State.
That's enough of a reason right there to end the death penalty.
Why some lawmakers are calling the state's 43-year-old law a flawed system, all while lawmakers are looking to legalize a new execution method. Plus, another Amtrak route could soon be rolling through central Ohio. Coming up, the major approval that could create a boost to our local economy and where a ticket on the new train will take you. And later, he's the longtime CBS Sunday Morning correspondent and best-selling author Mo Rocca. And he's out with a new book, Octogenarian's late-in-life debuts, comebacks, and triumphs. I caught up with him to talk about the inspiration for the book and a few of the amazing characters he features in it. We're coming off a busy week at the State House. Lawmakers heard several major bills relating to everything from sextortion crimes to process changes following the largest corruption scandal in Ohio history. Plus, we're following a large financial investment to help mothers and young children and a push for transparency when it comes to your hospital costs. All now one step closer to becoming law. But first, the death penalty debate is taking center stage once again at the State House. Thank you for joining us for Face the State this Sunday morning. I'm Doug Petcash. Black lawmakers reasserted their commitment to ending the death penalty in Ohio. They took this stance against the death penalty as part of their news conference recognizing Juneteenth. The Ohio Legislative Black Caucus said it's time to dismantle what they call a flawed system. They're pushing for the state Senate and House of Representatives to pass bills that would repeal the state's death penalty laws. The companion bills would abolish the death penalty and require life sentences for those convicted of aggravated murder.
Doesn't stop the individual from staying in jail for the rest of their life, if whatever the case may be, but to actually execute someone, and then find out later that that person did not commit the crime. That's enough of a reason right there to end the death penalty.
We envision an Ohio that values life and fairness, prioritizing rehabilitation over punishment and mercy over vengeance, ensuring justice and dignity for all.
According to the recent Capital Crimes Report, right now 119 inmates are sitting on Ohio's death row. The Legislative Black Caucus also pointed to other issues they say are impacting the black community unequally, including the jury pool, conviction and incarceration rates, and affordable housing. Meanwhile, a bill to add the use of nitrogen hypoxia as an execution method is making its way through the State House. Ohio hasn't carried out the death penalty since 2018. Governor Mike DeWine declared an unofficial moratorium on executions because the state can't get the necessary drugs for lethal injection. With the bill, nitrogen hypoxia would have to be used if lethal injection drugs were not available. The bill has the support of Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost.
This seems to be available, relatively straightforward, and we don't have supply problems.
Alabama used the nitrogen hypoxia method earlier this year, the first state in the U.S. to do so. Lawmakers are also considering a proposed law honoring 15-year-old Braden Marcus. Braden was an Olentangy High School football player who took his own life in 2021 when he became the victim of a financial sextortion scam. House Bill 531 would increase penalties for sextortion crimes, making it a felony with extended prison time. That bill had its second hearing in a House committee. Data shows between October of 2021 and March of 2023, the FBI and Homeland Security received more than 13,000 reports of financial sextortion involving minors. And in the same House committee, a bill that would help human trafficking victims move on with their lives. A Senate bill to allow survivors to expunge certain nonviolent criminal records just had its first hearing. Those in favor of it say a criminal record can be a roadblock for a job, housing, and educational opportunities. The bill has already passed in the Senate, but still needs to pass the House committee and a full House vote before going to the governor's desk for his consideration. This week, state senators testified in favor of a bill that would change the nomination process for the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. They say this follows the House Bill 6 scandal involving First Energy. It has been called the largest bribery scheme in state history. State Senator Bill DeMora says the state wants to make sure the public can trust the agency and make sure something like House Bill 6 can never happen again. The former Speaker of the Ohio House pleaded not guilty to new state charges against him in that scandal. Larry Householder is currently serving a 20-year sentence for federal charges. He now faces state charges in connection to alleged theft in office and tampering with records. Two former First Energy executives also face state charges in relation to the bribery scandal. Chuck Jones and Michael Dowling both pleaded not guilty to multiple felony counts against them back in February. Former Public Utilities Commission Chairman Sam Randazzo was also charged, but he died by suicide in April. A trip to the hospital can be very expensive. State lawmakers are working to make sure you know how much it will cost you. The state Senate passed a hospital price transparency bill. It will basically let you know what's going to be on your hospital bill. This is so patients can find out in an easy way what they'll have to pay if and when they have to go to the hospital. The bill will require hospitals to comply with the federal price transparency rule enacted in 2021. It requires hospitals to publish a consumer-friendly list of charges for hospital services. They can meet that requirement if they use an accurate price estimator tool. It also allows patients to file complaints to the Department of Health for violations. If a violation is found, state penalties would match the penalties imposed by federal law, therefore doubling them.
While it is incredibly important to assure patients have access to accurate information, it is also important to ensure that Ohio does not have a more complex bureaucracy than does the federal government, and that our state's economic environment is not hostile to businesses.
The bill passed in the Senate by a vote of 27-6. Because senators made changes to this House bill, it has to go back to the House to be reconciled. The Ohio Hospital Association says hospitals and health systems are working to comply with both state and federal price transparency policies. You can see the OHA and Ohio Children's Hospital Association's joint testimony on the bill in this story on 10tv.com. Another key issue lawmakers took on last week was the health and safety of Ohio's babies and new moms. The House passed a bill known as the Strong Foundations Act. The name of the bill really describes its goal: to give new moms and their babies a strong foundation that can lead to a healthy future. The bill passed in the House by a vote of 72-19. The bipartisan bill would provide support for mothers and children from birth to age 3. It would do this by investing $35 million over the next 2 years into several programs, from health care to early intervention. It would address key issues, including maternal and infant mortality, pregnancy and parenting education, stable housing and child care services in underserved communities. Millions of dollars in funding was cut from the original bill, but co-sponsor, Democrat Latina Humphrey of Columbus, says it wasn't needed because it was covered in other ways.
It's still a beautiful, vibrant bill that is going to help babies and children all across the diaspora, from urban communities all the way to Appalachia. And so I'm very proud of the work that we've done with House Bill 7.
When you value life, you want to make sure that you protect it and help in any way you can.
Now again, the bill passed in the House by a vote of 72-19. It now heads to the Senate. And just this week, Columbus City Council approved a grant extension for money that will go toward helping mothers quit smoking during pregnancy. Health experts say smoking during pregnancy is a large indicator of infant mortality. The extended funding is for the Moms Quit for Two program. It aims to reduce low birth weights and preterm birth rates and increase overall quit rates. The Ohio Department of Health awarded more than $150,000 to continue the program. Ohio is now receiving $27.7 million following a settlement with Johnson & Johnson. It's related to allegations that the company's marketing of baby powder and body powder products containing talc was not honest. The settlement is part of a $700 million deal with 42 other states. Johnson & Johnson has permanently stopped making, marketing, and distributing any talc-based baby and body powders in the United States. A second train route from Columbus to Chicago is now moving forward. This all comes just 8 months after Amtrak announced an expansion through Columbus. The Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, or MORPC, says the route would connect Columbus to the Midwest and eventually to Chicago. Ohio leaders say they're excited to bring more tourism through the area from outside of Ohio. They say this will help boost our local economy.
We also have business organizations, advocacy organizations, labor, cities, villages, counties, educational institutions. They're all pushing for this to happen. And what's exciting about it is they each see the benefits and how it could help their workforce, how it could help their students, how it could help their families.
Right now, MORPC is still coming up with a plan to get funding. Their current timeline would complete the line for riding by 2030. As AI technology quickly advances, Ohio's public universities, industry leaders, and state government agencies are looking to put the state in the best position to take advantage of it. The Inter-University Council of Ohio brought them all together for a symposium in the State House atrium. The IUC represents Ohio's 14 public universities. Topics included dealing with the dark side of AI, such as cybersecurity threats, deepfakes, and disinformation. But organizers say the main focus of the symposium was how Ohio can leverage AI to advance the interests of the state.
Workforce, how are we developing the workforce for this burgeoning technology? What are we doing on our campuses? We have industry folks here who are going to talk to the university folks and say, this is where we can partner, this is what we can do. Likewise, what are we doing in the areas of research?
This was the first artificial intelligence symposium put on by the Inter-University Council of Ohio. Republican State Senator Michael Rulli will become the next U.S. House representative for Ohio. His win in Tuesday's special election expands the GOP's narrow majority in the House. Rulli will represent the 6th Congressional District in eastern Ohio. He defeated Democrat Michael Kripchak by 10 points. The election took place under congressional maps that the Ohio Supreme Court deemed unconstitutionally gerrymandered to favor Republicans. Still ahead on Face the State, from just a few hundred marchers to becoming one of the largest pride parades in the country. 10 TV sat down with one of the original organizers of the Stonewall Columbus Pride March. But first, I'm going one-on-one with a familiar Sunday morning face, CBS Sunday morning correspondent Mo Rocca. In just 2 minutes, what he says the inspiration was behind his new book that's hitting store shelves now. Welcome back to Face the State. Fans of CBS Sunday Morning will certainly recognize my next guest. Mo Rocca has been a correspondent on that show for the last 17 years. He's also the best-selling author of the book Mobituaries, and he just released his latest book. The title is Roctogenarians, Late-in-Life Debuts, Comebacks, and Triumphs. His publisher describes it as an inspiring collection of stories that celebrates the triumphs of people who made their biggest marks late in life. Mo and his co-author, Jonathan Greenberg, chronicle the stories of famous figures, including Colonel Sanders, Rita Moreno, and architect Frank Lloyd Wright, and not-so-famous figures, such as Revolutionary War hero Samuel Whittemore, and even a tortoise who became a father for the first time at the age of 90. Mo is coming to Columbus on June 25th as part of his book tour. I'll have more information on that in just a little bit. First, though, I caught up with him this week by Zoom. And I started by asking him what was the inspiration for the book.
Well, the genesis of the book is kind of back in 2015. I'm a regular panelist on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, a news comedy quiz show on NPR. And we had Chance the Rapper on. And we were asking him, those of us on the show were asking him goofy questions about how to write a rap. And I said at the time I was 46, I said, I'm 46. Am I too old to become a rapper? And it was kind of a shticky question. I was expecting an easy laugh, and I kind of got one. But he took the question seriously without missing a beat. He said, I don't know. Some people might say you're too young, or that it's too soon for you to become a rapper. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks that I had internalized this idea that even as young as 46, that I was somehow over the hill. Because I think that message is so powerful and insidious that life has passed you by, when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s. And so my co-author, John Greenberg, and I wanted to look at lives now and in the past of people who had accomplished great things in the last third of their lives. And there were commonalities among these people. They simply refused to accept the idea that the last act of life, if you will, as a time for sort of winding things down. And they were future focused and living in the moment. They certainly weren't backward focused.
One of the interesting characters that you talk about is Harlan Sanders, who is, of course, well known as Colonel Sanders, the icon. Maybe people don't even realize that that is a real person, but he really didn't become the colonel until later in life, right?
Yeah. So his story is great because Harlan Sanders was from Kentucky, and in the small town of Corbin, Kentucky, he was running a Shell gas station / chicken and biscuits joint. It did fine, and it served his delicious chicken, but the word really had not moved beyond the town. In the late 1950s, a highway came through Kentucky, bypassing his restaurant. So the bottom fell out of the business. He sold it at a loss at auction. He was living off of Social Security. He was 66 years old. And so he got in his car with 2 pressure cookers and his secret recipe of 11 herbs and spices. And he started driving from town to town, restaurant to restaurant, cooking for total strangers, getting them hooked on his recipe. And within 8 years, when he was 74, he was the face of a Kentucky fried empire with about 800 outlets worldwide. And this is a story of people know it globally because people love fried chicken globally. But this is a person who built this empire at a time when he could have been subsisting off of his Social Security, but that wasn't good enough for him.
As I mentioned, you go way into the past too. I'm going to do one more anecdote because I don't want to give away your whole book.
No, that's fine.
Samuel Whittemore is
Love this story.
Yeah.
So Samuel Whittemore fought on the very first day of the American Revolution during the battles of Lexington and Concord in 1775. He was 78 years old. He was somebody who he had fought before for the British, but then he decided that he was on the side of the colonists and wanted independence from the crown. On that first day of battle, he, forget the expression, picked off 3 redcoats before he had his cheek blown off and got stabbed in the head by a redcoat. Okay. He was left for dead, except he didn't die. He kept going. He lived another 18 years. I mean, this is a guy who had his face blown off and was stabbed in the head and kept on going. That is the spirit that we all need.
Talking about the process of writing this book, what was the most enjoyable part of that for you? Was it the gathering of the stories or the telling of them or something else?
You know, I love the gathering of the stories. So I have a wonderful co-author, my old friend Jonathan Greenberg, and we did the Obituaries book together. We did that in 2019. But we are old friends, and it is so much fun picking through a pile of story candidates. I had a lot sort of in a bank of my own. He brought a bunch. We had a researcher help us that had worked on Obituaries. So there are a lot of stories. There's enough for 5 or 6 volumes, frankly, I think, of this book. The mix of stories is really fun. I like to think that any book that can combine abstract expressionist Carmen Herrera, who had to wait until she was 101 and still painting to have her first solo show at a major museum, and, you know, Mr. Pickles, the Houston Zoo tortoise, who became a father for the first time at 90, you know, and Estelle Getty, because we had to have at least one Golden Girl, who made her television debut at 62. Anytime you can do that book, you know, and throw in Brian May, the guitarist for Queen, who resumed his studies in astrophysics at 60 and earned his PhD, that's my kind of book.
That is an all-encompassing look at it. So you're going to be here in late June for this event. What can people expect while you're here on this tour?
Well, they can expect me to not be winding down, to not be clocking out. I love live events, and I loved coming to the James Thurber House for Obituaries. I love Columbus. I love Ohio. And, you know, I'm even willing to say that Ohio really is the mother of presidents, which it calls itself, even though there are only 7 presidents from Ohio and 8 that were actually born in Virginia. That's okay. I mean, Virginia had a leg up. It was a state earlier. But I love Ohio. The Ohio Historical Association, by the way, is one of, if not the best state historical society in the country.
And I just want to add with one thing too. I have followed you since back in the day when you were new on The Daily Show. And I thought, man, that guy has the perfect stage name, Mo Rocca, but it's actually your name.
Well, my first name is really Maurice, but I've been Mo since about 6th or 7th grade. And I'll tell you, when I came to New York and I was auditioning for theater, and I do theater. I did an off-Broadway play a few years ago. I was on Broadway in a musical in 2007. But I found that when I auditioned that Mo Rocca was a whole lot more memorable than Maurice Rocca. But I kind of like Mo. I like answering to it. It feels right.
Now, as I mentioned, Mo is coming to Columbus as part of his Roctogenarians book tour on Tuesday, June 25th. I have the privilege of leading a conversation with him about the book at an event that night. Thurber House Literary Arts Center and Museum is putting on the event at the Columbus College of Art and Design. It starts at 7 p.m. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions, meet and take a picture with Mo, and get your book signed. You can find a link to buy tickets on 10tv.com/featured links. It's Pride, decades in the making. After the break, what one of the original founders of the Stonewall Columbus Pride March says was their motivation to take to the streets for the very first time all those years ago.
Monday on Wake Up C-Bus, the heat and your pet. Columbus Humane has some safety reminders. I'm Tracy Townsend. Emergency medical experts have advice for your kids too. Monday on Wake Up C-Bus starting at 4:25.
We're celebrating Pride Month in our community. The Stonewall Columbus Pride March was yesterday. It draws hundreds of thousands of people to the city every year. But did you know it started out with just a few hundred marchers? 10 TV's Kevin Landers sat down with one of the original organizers, Douglas Whaley, and he takes us through how marchers demanded equal rights.
We're here and we ain't leaving.
It was the 1980s. They were young, gay, and proud.
We were celebrating the idea that we were homosexuals and we were not going to stay in the closet any longer.
They were also tired.
We want the same things that everybody else has, and we deserve to have them.
Of living in a city and a world that said they didn't have much to be proud of.
We were just celebrating the fact that we existed and we were a force in Columbus, and Columbus had to get used to it. And that was not a popular message.
Douglas Whaley helped organize the first Pride March in 1981. He was afraid no one would show up, but hundreds did.
The greatest high I've ever had, natural high in my life, was after the parade, we all just gathered and walked down the street, and we were dumbfounded by what we had done. And just this sense of joy.
And over 40 years, hundreds have become hundreds of thousands.
The parade is still a huge success every year.
And Columbus has become a city that's very proud.
That was Kevin Landers reporting. As Pride Month continues, we have a full list of events happening around Central Ohio. Just text the word Pride to 614-460-3345 and we'll send you a link to it straight to your phone. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. Please join us again next Sunday morning at 11:30.